What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't a lack of talent, a lack of intelligence, or even a lack of opportunity? What if the real problem is something much simpler, something so ordinary that most people never notice it? Because the truth is, most people are not defeated by failure. They're defeated by inconsistency. They start with enthusiasm. They begin with excitement. They promise themselves that this time will be different. But days become weeks. Weeks become months. And eventually, the same dreams that once inspired them become distant memories. Not because they weren't capable, but because they relied on something unreliable. Motivation. For years, we've been taught that motivation is the key to success. That if we just feel inspired enough, determined enough, passionate enough, we can accomplish anything. But what if that's not true? What if motivation is actually one of the most dangerous things you can depend on? Because motivation comes and goes. It changes with your mood, your energy, your circumstances, your emotions. Discipline is different. Discipline remains when motivation disappears. And that's why discipline has built more success stories than talent, intelligence, or luck ever could. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore the truth about discipline. Not the version people post on social media. Not the version that sounds inspiring for a few minutes. The real version. The one that changes lives. And if you truly understand it, you may never look at success the same way again. Most people spend their lives waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting for inspiration to strike. Waiting for motivation to appear. And while they're waiting, life keeps moving. Think about how many goals are abandoned every year. Gym memberships purchased in January and forgotten by March. Books that are never finished. Businesses that are never started. Dreams that never leave the imagination. The pattern is almost always the same. Someone feels inspired. They take action. They see a little progress. Then motivation fades. And once motivation disappears, so does the effort. The problem isn't that motivation is bad. The problem is that motivation is temporary. It's an emotion, and emotions are constantly changing. Imagine if a pilot only flew a plane when he felt motivated, or a doctor only treated patients when she felt inspired, or a firefighter only responded to emergencies when he was in the mood. The world would collapse. Yet many people approach their goals exactly this way. They work when they feel like it. They improve when they feel like it. They take action when they feel like it. And then they wonder why progress is so inconsistent. The truth is simple. Motivation gets you started. Discipline keeps you going. And the people who achieve extraordinary things understand this better than anyone. They don't rely on emotions. They rely on systems. They rely on habits. They rely on commitments. Because they know something most people never learn. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. A person who waits for motivation will always be controlled by circumstances. A disciplined person creates progress regardless of circumstances. And that difference changes everything. Think about the most successful people you've ever heard of. Athletes, entrepreneurs, writers, artists, scientists. Do you believe they wake up every day feeling excited to do difficult work? Of course not. They're human. They experience the same doubts, the same fears, the same moments of exhaustion. The difference is that they act anyway. They've learned that success is rarely about feeling good. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you don't feel like doing it. And that may be one of the most valuable lessons you'll ever learn. Because the moment you stop waiting for motivation, you begin taking control of your future. One of the biggest misconceptions about success is the belief that it happens all at once. People imagine dramatic transformations, a breakthrough moment, a life-changing opportunity, a sudden leap from where they are to where they want to be. But real success rarely works that way. In reality, most extraordinary results are the consequence of ordinary actions repeated consistently over time. The problem is that small actions often feel insignificant. Reading 10 pages of a book doesn't seem life-changing. Saving a few dollars doesn't seem life-changing. Going for a short walk doesn't seem life-changing. Practicing a skill for 20 minutes doesn't seem life-changing. And because the results aren't immediately visible, most people stop. They underestimate the power of consistency because they overestimate the importance of immediate results. But life operates according to a different principle. The principle of accumulation. Imagine placing a single drop of water on a stone. Nothing happens. Place another drop. Still nothing. Another. And another. And another. For days, weeks, even months. the stone appears unchanged. But over time, those drops begin to leave a mark. Eventually, they reshape the stone itself. Success often works in exactly the same way. The actions that seem meaningless today are quietly shaping the person you are becoming. The workout you almost skipped, the chapter you almost didn't read, the skill you almost didn't practice, the decision to keep going when nobody was watching. These moments may appear small, but they are never insignificant, because every action is casting a vote for the person you want to become. Every disciplined choice strengthens your identity. Every excuse strengthens a different identity. And over time, those identities become your reality. Most people focus on goals. Disciplined people focus on systems. A goal is something you want to achieve. A system is something you repeatedly do. The problem with goals is that they only matter temporarily. Once you achieve a goal, the motivation often disappears. But systems continue. Systems create momentum. Systems create consistency. Systems create results. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't wake up every morning and debate whether or not you should do it. You simply do it. It's part of who you are. Imagine if discipline worked the same way. Imagine if exercising wasn't a decision. Imagine if learning wasn't a decision. Imagine if improving yourself wasn't a decision. Imagine if it simply became part of your identity. That's where real transformation begins. Not when you force yourself to act, but when the action becomes part of who you are. Many people ask, how can I become more disciplined? But perhaps the better question is, what kind of person am I becoming? Because disciplined people don't constantly fight themselves. They build environments and habits that make discipline easier. They remove distractions. They create routines. They reduce unnecessary decisions. And over time, what once required effort becomes automatic. This is why small actions matter so much. Not because they change your life overnight, but because they slowly change your identity. And once your identity changes, your behavior follows naturally. A person who identifies as healthy behaves differently than someone who simply wants to lose weight. A person who identifies as a reader behaves differently than someone who merely wants to read a book. A person who identifies as disciplined behaves differently than someone who is waiting to feel motivated. The goal is not to achieve one disciplined day. The goal is to become a disciplined person. Because once that happens, success is no longer something you chase. It's something that naturally emerges from the way you live. And perhaps that's the most powerful truth about discipline. The greatest achievements in life are rarely built through massive efforts. They're built through small actions repeated consistently for years. While everyone else is searching for shortcuts, discipline quietly compounds in the background. And one day, the results become impossible to ignore. One of the most damaging beliefs people carry is the idea that successful individuals somehow feel different. That they wake up every morning energized, focused, motivated, ready to conquer the day. From the outside, it can certainly look that way. You see the finished product, the successful business, the fit body, the impressive achievements, the accomplishments that took years to build. But what you don't see are the countless moments that happened behind the scenes. The mornings when they felt exhausted, the days when they doubted themselves, the moments when they wanted to quit, the times when progress seemed invisible. Because here's something most people never realize. Successful people don't have fewer excuses. They simply refuse to obey them. They experience the same emotions as everyone else. They feel fear. They feel uncertainty. They feel frustration. They feel boredom. The difference is that they understand an important truth. Feelings are real, but they are not instructions. Just because you feel tired doesn't mean you should stop. Just because you feel afraid doesn't mean you should quit. Just because you feel unmotivated doesn't mean you should abandon your goals. Too many people allow temporary emotions to make permanent decisions. And in doing so, they give away control of their future. Imagine a person trying to climb a mountain. Some days the weather is perfect. The sky is clear. Energy is high. Progress feels easy. But other days are different. The wind is strong. The path is difficult. The body feels heavy. A person who relies solely on motivation will only climb when conditions are perfect. A disciplined person climbs regardless. And over time, the difference becomes enormous. Because life rarely rewards intensity. Life rewards consistency. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a week and underestimate what they can accomplish in 5 years. Why? Because they're constantly stopping and starting. They work hard for a few days, then disappear for a few weeks. They feel inspired. then lose momentum. They wait for the perfect moment, but the perfect moment never arrives. The people who achieve extraordinary things understand something different. They don't focus on being perfect. They focus on showing up. Even when the work feels boring. Even when the results feel slow. Even when nobody is watching. Especially when nobody is watching. Because discipline is not proven on your best days. It's proven on your worst days. Anyone can work hard when they're excited. Anyone can stay committed when progress is obvious. Anyone can feel confident when everything is going well. But what happens when things become difficult? What happens when results don't come quickly? What happens when effort seems invisible? That is where discipline separates itself from motivation. And that is where futures are built. Think about some of the greatest achievements in history. Books that changed millions of lives. Companies that transformed industries. Athletes who reached the highest levels of competition. None of these accomplishments happened because someone felt motivated every day. They happened because someone continued long after motivation disappeared, long after excitement faded, long after the novelty was gone. The uncomfortable truth is that greatness is often built in moments that feel ordinary. The workout that nobody applauds, the study session nobody notices, the extra hour spent learning, the decision to continue when quitting would be easier. These moments rarely look important when they're happening, but years later, they become the foundation of an entirely different life. And perhaps that's why discipline is so powerful. It allows you to keep moving forward when your emotions are trying to pull you backward. It allows you to stay focused when distractions are everywhere. It allows you to remain committed to your future self instead of surrendering to your present feelings. The next time you find yourself thinking, "I don't feel like it today," remember something important. Neither do many of the people you admire. The difference is that they act anyway. And every time they do, they strengthen a habit, a mindset, an identity that says, "I do what needs to be done, regardless of how I feel." And over time, that identity becomes one of the most valuable assets a person can possess. Because success is not reserved for the most talented. It's not reserved for the smartest. And it's certainly not reserved for the most motivated. More often than not, success belongs to the people who simply refuse to stop. If there is one belief that has stopped countless people from reaching their potential, it's this: "I just don't have the talent." It's a phrase that sounds harmless, but hidden inside it is a dangerous assumption. The assumption that successful people possess something special that the rest of us don't. That athletes are simply born athletes. That great writers are simply born writers. That entrepreneurs are simply born entrepreneurs. That disciplined people are simply born disciplined. And while talent certainly exists, its importance is often greatly exaggerated. Because talent may determine where you start, but discipline determines how far you go. Think about a child who is naturally gifted at playing the piano. At first, they may learn faster than everyone else. They may impress people with how easily they perform. But what happens if they stop practicing? What happens if they become lazy? What happens if they rely entirely on natural ability? Eventually, someone less talented but more disciplined catches up, then passes them. History is full of examples like this. Not because talent failed, but because discipline continued. The world loves stories about gifted individuals. They're exciting. They're inspiring. They're easy to understand. What people rarely talk about are the thousands of invisible hours that created the result. The early mornings, the late nights, the sacrifices, the repetitions, the failures, the years of effort that nobody witnessed. Because discipline isn't glamorous. It doesn't create dramatic headlines. It doesn't generate instant success. It's slow, quiet, sometimes even boring. Yet it remains one of the most powerful forces in human achievement. Imagine two people starting the same journey. The first person has extraordinary talent. The second person has average talent but exceptional discipline. For a few weeks, perhaps even a few months, the talented person may appear ahead. Everything seems easier for them. Progress comes faster. Results arrive sooner. But over the years, something interesting happens. The disciplined person keeps improving, keeps learning, keeps showing up, keeps practicing, keeps growing, while the talented person begins relying on what they already know. And little by little, the gap begins to close. Then one day, the disciplined person moves ahead, not because they became more talented, but because consistency outperformed potential. This happens more often than people realize. Because discipline compounds. Talent does not. Talent can give you an advantage. Discipline multiplies that advantage. Talent can open a door. Discipline determines whether you walk through it. And this is good news. Because discipline is available to everyone. You cannot control your genetics. You cannot control where you were born. You cannot control the opportunities you were given as a child. But you can control what you do today. You can control whether you show up. You can control whether you keep learning. You can control whether you take one more step forward. And those choices matter far more than most people think. Consider the people you admire most. Perhaps it is an athlete, a business leader, an artist, a creator, a scientist. If you study their journey closely, you'll often discover the same pattern. The public sees the success, but success was built long before anyone was paying attention, long before the recognition, long before the rewards, long before the applause. They kept going when the outcome was uncertain. They kept working when progress was invisible. They kept believing when there was no guarantee of success. And that is not talent. That is discipline. Perhaps the greatest lie people tell themselves is, I'll start when I'm more talented. But talent isn't the prerequisite. Action is. Progress is. Consistency is. Nobody becomes exceptional before they begin. People become exceptional because they begin, then continue, again and again, year after year, failure after failure, lesson after lesson, until what once seemed impossible becomes normal. The truth is that most successful people are not extraordinary because of talent. They're extraordinary because they continued long after most people would have quit. And that's a powerful realization, because it means your future is not limited by your current abilities. It's limited only by how long you're willing to remain committed to improving them. In the end, talent may help you start the race, but discipline is what carries you across the finish line. For a moment, I want you to imagine something. Imagine that 10 years from now, you receive a letter, not from a friend, not from a family member, not from a mentor, but from yourself, the future version of you, the person your current habits are creating, the person your daily decisions are shaping, the person you will eventually become if you continue living exactly the way you live today. Now imagine opening that letter. What would it say? Would it begin with gratitude? Would your future self thank you for staying disciplined when it was difficult? For continuing when progress felt invisible? For making sacrifices that nobody understood? Would they thank you for choosing long-term growth over short-term comfort? Or would the letter sound very different? Would it be filled with regret? Regret for opportunities that were ignored. Regret for dreams that remained unfinished. Regret for years spent waiting for the perfect moment. Because the truth is that most regrets are not created in a single day. They are created gradually. One excuse at a time. One delay at a time. One missed opportunity at a time. Most people imagine regret as something dramatic. But often, regret is quiet. It whispers. It appears years later when you realize what could have been. When you realize you had enough time, enough potential, enough opportunities, but never developed the discipline to act consistently. Imagine your future self looking directly at you right now. What would they want you to understand? Perhaps they would tell you that success was never as complicated as it seemed. Perhaps they would tell you that the hardest part was simply showing up. Again, and again, and again, even when you didn't feel like it. Even when nobody was watching. Even when the results seemed far away. Because every meaningful achievement is built the same way. Not through one heroic effort, but through thousands of small decisions. Most people spend years searching for the secret, the shortcut, the breakthrough, the one thing that will suddenly transform their lives. But your future self already knows the answer. The answer was never hidden. The answer was consistency. The answer was discipline. The answer was becoming the type of person who follows through. Think about where you could be 10 years from now. Not if everything goes perfectly. Not if you become extraordinary overnight. Simply if you improve a little every day. If you read a little more, learn a little more, practice a little more, grow a little more. The difference would be unimaginable. Yet most people never experience that future. Not because they're incapable, but because they underestimate the power of daily actions. They abandon the process before the results appear. They stop before momentum begins. They quit before the transformation becomes visible. And that's the tragedy. Not failure. Not mistakes. Not setbacks. The real tragedy is quitting before discovering what you were truly capable of becoming. Your future self understands something your present self often forgets. Life moves faster than you think. The years pass whether you act or not. The days continue whether you improve or not. Time does not pause while you wait to feel ready. Time moves forward. And every day, you are becoming someone. The only question is who. Will you become the person who consistently chose comfort, or the person who consistently chose growth? Will you become the person who waited, or the person who acted? Because every decision matters. Every habit matters. Every day matters. Not because one day changes everything, but because thousands of days eventually do. And one day, years from now, you'll wake up and meet the person you're building today. The question is simple. When that moment comes, will you be proud of what you created, or will you wish you had started sooner? The answer is being written right now. With every choice you make, with every excuse you reject, with every promise you keep to yourself, your future self is watching. And whether you realize it or not, they're counting on you. If you remember only one thing from this video, let it be this. Discipline is not about being perfect. It never was. It's not about waking up every day feeling motivated. It's not about never making mistakes. It's not about having unlimited energy, confidence, or willpower. Discipline is something much simpler and much more powerful. It's the decision to keep going, especially when you don't feel like it. Because the truth is that your future will not be determined by your best day. It will be determined by your ordinary days. The days when nobody is watching. The days when you're tired. The days when progress feels invisible. The days when quitting seems easier than continuing. Those are the moments that shape your life. Those are the moments that build character. Those are the moments that separate who you are today from who you will become tomorrow. Many people spend their lives waiting for a breakthrough, waiting for inspiration, waiting for confidence, waiting for certainty. But discipline teaches a different lesson. It teaches that action comes first. Confidence comes later. Results come later. Transformation comes later. The people you admire were not born different. They simply learned to continue when others stopped. They learned to trust the process before they could see the outcome. They learned that success is rarely about doing something extraordinary once. It's about doing ordinary things extraordinarily well, over and over again. And perhaps that's the most empowering truth of all, because it means your future is not reserved for the gifted. It's not reserved for the lucky. It's not reserved for the chosen few. It's available to anyone willing to remain committed long enough. Anyone willing to show up. Anyone willing to take one more step. Anyone willing to keep a promise to themselves. So as you leave this video, ask yourself one question. Not where you want to be next year. Not where you want to be in 5 years. Ask yourself this. What is one small action I can take today that my future self will thank me for? Then do it. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Because every great achievement begins the same way. With a single decision. A decision to act. A decision to continue. A decision to become. And one day, years from now, you'll look back and realize that the life you wanted was never created in a single moment. It was created through thousands of disciplined choices that nobody saw. Choices that seemed insignificant at the time, but ultimately changed everything. Thank you for listening. And remember, motivation may start the journey, but discipline is what carries you to the destination. And true success belongs to those who keep moving forward one step at a time. Welcome to Beyond Wealth. Because true wealth goes beyond money.